Hello everybody, it's Elizabeth, aka Poetry in Motion, and welcome back to my midweek roundup, a video series where every Wednesday I talk about the last week's chapter of the Clan Jaren series, read your comments, and answer your questions. So this past week's chapter was Sleeping Arrangements Part 2, in which we get to see Din's dream from Sleeping Arrangements 1, and Din and Omera reach a new milestone in their relationship. So, without further ado, let's get started. So let's start with a comment from Kit1 on AO3. Gah! I've been waiting for this update all morning. Loved it, with 4 O's. Man, his dream and how it changed, love this so much. Well, first of all, Kit, I always love it when you comment because your enthusiasm is infectious, especially with all those exclamation points. You guys didn't see it, but after the last sentence there were like 9 exclamation points. It's delightful. I can tell it's you without even having to look at the username when you comment, and I love it. So the content of your comment also got touched on by fellow AO3 user Calico, or Calico321, who wrote, "Loved this. The dream definitely symbolized Din's conflict. Now the happy ending is all the closer," with a little smiley face. And yes, it is. It is inching closer and closer and closer with every chapter, I promise. So let's talk about the dream sequence for a minute, because I absolutely love writing dreams, because you can go absolutely wild with the symbolism in ways that you can't really do when your characters are awake. Now, I'm a published poet, right? So symbolism and imagery are my bread and butter. They're what puts bread on the table. So I kind of see dream sequences as the perfect opportunity to bring my skill set as a poet into this world of prose that I've created. And so I really wanted the dream to embody Din's desire to have a family, as well as his fear of becoming Darmanda, that is, a Mandalorian who has rejected their identity, and they sort of become pariahs, anathema to the rest of the Mandalorian community. On one hand, he wants so badly to have a family. He wants that peace and quiet, something that was taken from him at a very early age. But on the other hand, he loves his identity as a Mandalorian, and he wants to keep it. It's who he is. And I do imply in the dream that having both is possible. And with the description of his helmet looking at him, freshly polished like an old friend, that was very intentional. And it implies that Din can still keep and respect his Mandalorian identity, he can keep it alive, while also finding this peace, this idyll, this family. So in the dream, him turning into Beskar isn't really representing Din's identity entrapping him. He doesn't feel constricted by being a Mandalorian at all. It more represents his fear of losing that precious part of himself that he has just built his whole life around and that he has clung to for so long. That's more what the Beskar represents. But in the dream, as in reality, he finds comfort and relief with Omera. Now, I want to pause for a minute and talk about Omera in the dream. I actually wrote 3 versions of this dream sequence. First, it was the one that obviously got published, but then I got really, really insecure about it. Okay, you can stop now. You can stop now. Thank you. I'm outside. There's birds. What are you gonna do, right? But anyway, I got really insecure about the version of the dream that I eventually published, so I wrote another version where there's a 3rd child playing with Winta and Baby Yoda, and the kid looks a lot like Din. But I axed that version too, because with the kid looking so much like Din, I saw an opening for some Freudian interpretation there, and in this house we do not give a Freud an inch if we can help it. I do not respect Freud much at all. A lot of the time, a cigar is just a cigar, my man. You have issues. But then in the 3rd version of the dream, there's no 3rd child at all. You know, whether born or unborn, there is no 3rd child there. But that version felt even worse because it felt like it was totally ignoring this really important layer of Din's psyche, his relationship with Omera. He wants domesticity, sure. He wants fluff, and he's gotten a bunch of that in the aftermath, especially in the latter chapters. But he also has this yearning for that physicality, that sexuality, that he wants to be able to access that. He wants to be able to freely access it. And that deep-seated desire is something that he has in common with Omera, which we saw in Sleeping Arrangements 1. He wants to give her what she wants. He wants to be able to access that sexuality part of himself. Omera being pregnant with his baby in the dream points to that, but he can't bring himself to do it. That is in the original dream, before the ending changes. But then the ending changes. AO3 user RPCV Liz really hit it on the nail when they wrote, "I'm glad to see that Din's dreams indicate that his new reality is easier to accept." And that's exactly what happens. When Omera acknowledges him, holds his hand, kisses him, the Beskar, that is all of his anxieties, they fall away. And it leads to, when Din wakes up, he takes off his braces and his pauldrons, and he and Omera have their first cuddle. Oh, I really wanted it to be my ending. That growth of intimacy between the two of them, both in the dream and outside of it, was really important for me to end on. Whew, boy, that was a lot. So let's look at some more comments and some more questions. AO3 user Beckelston wrote, "Sweet, I love awkward, shy Din." Me too, Beckelston. Me too. We stand one emotionally awkward Mando in this house, and it is Din Djarin. You know, there are some situations where Din commands the space, right? He's the king of a combat situation. He's the king of a negotiation. But when it comes to being vulnerable, he is so completely inept, and we love him for it, you know? AO3 user Sheena is a punk rocker commented, and I am going to try and pronounce this key smash, so wish me luck. Ioden Kodn Ken I tried. I'm sorry, Sheena, I tried. We got cuddles finally, woo! I've been having the absolute shittiest last 2 days, so this was exactly the thing I needed to help cheer me up, so thank you so much. That's what I write for, man. That's why I write, because I want to be able to make someone's day a little brighter, to give them some escapism, to give them some magic. And I was so touched when I read that comment, and I am so grateful that I was able to give that to you, Sheena. I am so glad that you are along for this ride. She continues, or at least I think you're she or they continue. One question for you for the upcoming video. How much time has passed between the first one shot and these last two? I assumed at least a few days had passed, but it also kind of read like the second one happened right after the first one. So the two Sleeping Arrangements shots happen about a week after the first one shot, Repairs. The first couple of paragraphs of part one describe the day that Din found the bed on Braca with the passenger seats and the seatbelts and everything. Then it sort of yo-yos back to the actual events of Sleeping Arrangements. So, side note on timeline stuff, these one-shots, this whole collection, takes place about 2 to 3 months before Sanctuary, when they finally settle on Navarro. Plot stuff for Sanctuary is getting pretty close to done, and I'm drafting a lot. I may have some sneak peeks for you in upcoming posts on Tumblr and maybe next week's weekly roundup, so stay tuned for that. I don't know if that wink came across, but I did indeed wink. So, speaking of Tumblr, let's take it over there for one last question from user Nikki Bogwater, who asks, Din X Omera is a largely underappreciated ship in this community. Unappreciated, rather. What drew you to the Mandomera scene in the first place? First of all, I had no idea it was so underrated. Like, when I went looking for fanfiction right after watching episode 4, you know, as one does, I was so surprised that there wasn't more there. I mean, it's the ship is gift wrapped for you. Did you hear that voice crack when Din replied to Amara when she said, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, that is yearning. That is textbook yearning. And I don't see how people missed that. That was actually the point where I took Maya Angelou's advice to write what you want to read. Write the book you want to read. And I started writing in the aftermath pretty soon after that. Then I kind of looked at the other ships, and let me just say something real quick before I say anything else. I'm not slamming any of these ships. You know, if you ship them, that is your prerogative, and I respect you and I respect that. But personally, I just don't see the appeal of them. So first I noticed Din x Cara, and let me tell you something, okay? Cara Dune is a stone cold butch, and you cannot change my mind. She is the butch this queer needs in her life, okay? That is the tea right there. But even outside of that headcanon, I got a lot more of a friendship vibe from the two. They feel more like comrades, like war buddies, you know? I just couldn't see them in a romantic scenario together. They're just way too similar. You know, their personalities are way too similar to each other. I just don't see how it could work. Then I saw Din x Paz, and I just don't see it. I'm sorry. They literally get into a fist fight in episode 3 where Paz calls Din a coward. And look, that's not something to take lightly. Calling a Mandalorian a coward is the worst thing you can do. I mean, he does come back at the end of episode 3 and helps Din escape, but I see that more in like a brotherhood, like, okay, we had an argument, but we're family by our bond, so I respect you. Now, a begrudging respect can be a good launching point for an interesting relationship dynamic, but the rest of the groundwork, the rest of the contact between the two of them is missing completely. Whereas with Din x Omera, it feels so simple. You know, it's right there. The ship dynamic is so much more interesting to me. Din needs some gentleness in his world full of chaos and hardship and just all around suckery. And Omera needs somebody who will protect her. Not that she's incapable of doing so for herself, mind you. But neither of them can be tough all the time. You know, they need somebody to lean on. And that ship dynamic is a lot more interesting than the others, personally, in my mind. It's a lot more interesting when you have two characters who are learning to be vulnerable together. I think that's what drew me to the ship anyway. Well, that does it for the midweek roundup, week 2. This week's chapter is called Seeds, and it's inspired by my own horticultural pursuits from the last week. I planted my herb garden in my backyard where I am right now, which was very exciting. Thank you guys so much for reading and for supporting my work and asking all of your awesome questions. Please, 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 please keep them comments coming. I got a little tongue-tied there. But please keep your questions coming. Always feel free to comment. Don't be strangers. Your comments give me life. And if you guys want more content, I have my Twitter at E, R, lowercase EAMES, at EA Reams, in other words. And my Tumblr is poetryinmotion-author. Go ahead and give those a follow if you want some more content, if you want to get to know me a little bit more, go for it. I also, guys, I have a brand new Ko-Fi page, or Ko-Fi, look, I'm not totally sure how to pronounce it, okay? But it's Ko-Fi. I'm just gonna say coffee. So this is relatively new to me, but if you feel like dropping a donation there, it's lowercase poetry in motion. That would be so sweet of you if you did that. There is no obligation whatsoever, but that would be lovely. Thank you guys so much. I really love you guys. Y'all are great. And I will see you on Saturday. Bye!